Tonight, tributes pour in for one of Canada's most well-known politicians. Former NDP leader Ed Broadbent has died at the age of 87. A look back at the life of a political giant.
He was in the pursuit of power for people.
And a champion for justice and equality. A showdown in the UN's top court over the Israel-Hamas war. South Africa accuses Israel of genocide in Gaza. Donald Trump cut off in court on the final day of his civil fraud trial after blasting the judge and New York's Attorney General.
She's got serious Trump derangement syndrome.
Plus, multi-million-dollar payouts for some Canadian Facebook and iPhone users.
This was a global issue, and unfortunately for Apple, it's going to have to write a lot of checks to settle it.
Two tech titans look to settle separate class action lawsuits.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. He never got to lead the country as Prime Minister, but Ed Broadbent left an indelible mark on its history. And tonight, the former NDP leader is being remembered as a political titan who championed the causes of the ordinary Canadian. Broadbent, who helped shape the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, had a more than two-decade-long career in the House of Commons, most of it as leader of the party, steadily expanding its seat count from 17 in 1974 to 43 in 1988, until Jack Layton catapulted the NDP into official opposition status for the first time in 2011 with 103 seats. CTV's Kevin Gallagher on Ed Broadbent's life and legacy.
Hi, I'm Ed Broadbent.
A Canadian political icon, Ed Broadbent helped shape the modern NDP through compassion and kindness.
We are all mourning a really big loss, not just for the New Democratic movement, but for all Canadians in Ed Broadbent, someone who was a working class hero and spent his whole life fighting for working people.
I want to begin, first of all, by thanking all you magnificent workers here in Oshawa.
He came from blue-collar roots. His father was an auto worker in Oshawa, Ontario, the riding Broadbent represented for 21 years. Though he was known as one of the country's most prominent academics, a professor of political theory, before he ran for office.
Right through the 80s, when I was just becoming politically active, I said, wow, here's someone that can talk about ordinary Canadians, yet with passion and with intellectual rigor.
He rose quickly to become NDP leader, opposing 4 different prime ministers and guiding the party to record electoral success in 1988.
He met the moment, and he always did what was necessary at the time.
Broadbent's trustworthy reputation earned him the nickname Honest Ed.
In Parliament, he was always very civilized. He was never nasty.
Now, where does Joe Clark stand?
Though he was also a formidable political foe, working to topple Joe Clark's progressive conservative minority government and pushing Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau to include language on Indigenous rights and women's equality rights in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Today, the current Prime Minister said Canada is better off because of Ed Broadbent's selfless service, an advocate for equality and champion for justice. His commitment to helping others never wavered. After politics, Broadbent founded a think tank advocating for economic fairness, environmental stewardship, and social justice. He was 87. Kevin Gallagher, CTV News, Ottawa.
At the United Nations top court today, South Africa argued Israel's war with Hamas amounts to a genocide against Palestinians, claims Israel denies. The case could take years to resolve, but South Africa has also asked the World Court to order an immediate suspension of Israel's military offensive in Gaza. Here's CTV's Judy Trin.
South Africa has positioned itself as protector of Palestinians at the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide and arguing for a ceasefire.
Israel's special genocidal intent is rooted in the belief that, in fact, the enemy is not just the military wing of Hamas, but is embedded in the fabric of Palestinian life in Gaza.
Lawyers describe the suffering, detailed the destruction of homes and hospitals, and used the words of Israeli politicians to show intent.
Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu said that Israel must find ways for Gazans that are more painful than death.
South Africa's support for Palestinians stretches back decades. Nelson Mandela and Yasser Arafat saw parallels in their people's fight for freedom. But Israel calls this legal fight baseless.
I think we have seen today one of the biggest shows of hypocrisy in history, when South Africa became the legal arm of a terror organization.
Outside the court, Palestinian supporters rallied. A few blocks away, Israeli supporters marched. In Canada, the government is choosing to stay on the sidelines for now.
We are aware of the filing. We are reviewing it carefully.
More than 2 million civilians have been displaced in Gaza, squeezed into designated zones Israel promises not to attack. At this refugee camp, they may be safe from airstrikes, but starvation and disease loom. Find us a solution, begs this woman. Every day there is death and slaughter. Tomorrow, Israel will get a chance to defend itself against South Africa's allegations and argue that a ceasefire will prevent it from protecting its people. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. Confirmation tonight that U.S. military forces, with the support of several allies, including Canada, have carried out strikes against a number of Houthi targets in Yemen. The White House says the strikes are in response to Houthi attacks on commercial shipping vessels in the Red Sea. The rebel group says it is protesting Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Police in Toronto announced a significant arrest today linked to the protests stemming from the war. A man is charged with inciting hatred for allegedly carrying what police are saying was the flag of a terrorist group during a march over the weekend.
Hate propaganda charges such as public incitement of hatred are unique and complex, as the law requires a very high threshold to lay charges under these provisions. This is an unprecedented charge.
Police also banned demonstrations on a stretch of one of Canada's busiest highways, calling it a public safety threat that has left the Jewish community living in the area feeling intimidated. And word today, the RCMP's counterterrorism team conducted searches at 3 locations around Quebec City yesterday, including Canadian Forces based Valcartier. Some people are being questioned, but so far, no arrests. There are fresh signs tonight this country's healthcare crisis needs urgent attention. And as CTV's Vanessa Lee tells us, the latest plea is coming from the Canadian Medical Association.
Too many patients and not enough staff or beds. It's a snapshot of the unsettling situation in ERs right across the country. It's happening in big centers like the Greater Toronto area, where it took 5 hours for Joey Salmango's newborn to see a doctor.
It took an hour just for us to see a triage nurse. For a 2.5-week-old to have a fever, there's so many other unpredictable things that could have happened in that 1 hour time just for us to be seen.
The crisis is also playing out in small communities. Katrin Georgie struggled with severe abdominal pain in the waiting room for 22 hours.
It was frightening. It was making me angry, but I was in too much pain to be really angry. You just try to hold it together.
Doctors say the health system has collapsed and is only getting worse, with staff feeling overwhelmed. The Canadian Medical Association is calling on provinces and territories to overhaul the entire system.
We need more doctors.
In many cases like Georgie's, people show up at the ER because they simply have nowhere else to turn.
We have a tremendous lack of primary care in Canada, and 1 in 5 Canadians don't have access at all. And, those that do have access to primary care struggle to access those services in a timely fashion.
Hospitals are under even more pressure right now as the respiratory illness season nears its peak, with high rates of the flu, RSV, and COVID is still circulating too. BC hospitals are currently treating a record high of more than 10,000 patients.
We're not out of the woods yet.
Across Quebec today, some ERs are operating at over 200% capacity. The health minister says it's not too late for people to get vaccinated, which could help ease the strain. Omar.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. From the crisis in healthcare to the housing crisis, we are learning tonight public servants warned the federal government 2 years ago that its higher immigration targets could make housing more expensive. Today, the finance minister defended the plan.
For immigration to work as a Canadian economic strategy, we have to be sure that housing supply keeps up. And that is what our government is absolutely focused on doing.
Documents obtained by the Canadian Press show population growth was outpacing supply. The lack of access to housing is coinciding with an increase in homeless encampments across Canada, and in one city has even led to a legal challenge. Here's CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier.
You can leave peacefully or you will be forcibly removed.
When police moved in to shut down an Edmonton homeless camp, things quickly turned confrontational. Police arrested 3 people accused of refusing to leave and interfering with officers, one of them a freelance journalist.
There's no violence here, nobody steals. We have a good rapport with the rest of the community. There should be no reason for this.
In recent weeks, police and city teams have dismantled 8 homeless camps across central Edmonton after they were labeled high risk last month.
We've got people burning to death. We've got gangs in there. We've got serious medical issues.
Lawyers for a human rights group have launched a lawsuit alleging the city is violating the charter rights of the people living in the camps. Other cities and provinces have taken different approaches. On the East Coast, the recent deaths of 2 homeless people have shone a light on the problem. In New Brunswick, a new homeless hub is expected to be in place in just weeks. Nova Scotia is bringing in 200 of these small cabins known as pallet shelters, some expected by late this month or early February.
This timeline has taken longer than I would have liked, absolutely. But I will tell you, there's a lot of hard work.
Late last year in Gatineau near Ottawa, dozens of insulated tents were set up with beds, electricity, and heaters to replace nearby camps. Edmonton's mayor has called a special council meeting Monday where he will declare a housing and homelessness emergency. He'll also bring together provincial, civic, and Indigenous leaders to discuss these encampments and what should be done about them. Omar.
All right, Bill, thank you. Punishing winter weather is especially dangerous for the most vulnerable, and tonight there are new warnings. As CTV's Alison Bamford tells us, most of Western Canada is still in the clutches of extreme cold.
After much of the West dug themselves out of this week's snowy blast, winter's wrath has finally settled in.
It's extreme, brutal.
Almost all of Western Canada is under an extreme cold warning, including the entire province of Alberta. Forecasted lows could drop as cold as -50 with the wind chill in the coming days. Extreme temperatures delayed flights in both Calgary and Edmonton and prompted a warning for those traveling on the highway.
Make sure you have an emergency kit in your car that includes things like, a sleeping bag or a comforter or candles.
On the BC coast, high tides and strong winds forced more ferry cancellations this morning. Now Vancouver is bracing for snow and Arctic air that could bring wind chills as cold as -20. As most of Western Canada waits for colder temperatures, Yellowknife is expecting a wind chill of -50 tonight. And the coldest temperatures in the country can be felt in Yukon. Omar?
All right, Alison Bamford in Regina, where it will be about -30 overnight. Alison, thank you. And CTV's meteorologist Kelsey McEwen joins us now with the forecast. Kelsey, what are you seeing?
Omar, this time we're talking a lot more snow for areas in Ontario and Quebec as the system arrives Friday, pushing through those provinces and then into Atlantic Canada as we round out the weekend. And in behind that, there's another system set to move into the region for early next week. So just how much snow are we talking? Well, this time, areas in the navy blue could see 15 to 30 centimeters. That would include communities right along the shore of Lake Ontario, including Toronto. The purple is 30 plus centimeters. And you notice Southwest Ontario, Central communities all the way up towards Ottawa and even Montreal, Quebec City, perhaps picking up nearly a foot of snow. Now, this all starts Friday afternoon, lasting overnight as we move into the weekend. Saturday, we'll see the spill into Atlantic Canada, a messy mix of rain and snow there, with snow on and off continuing through Saturday as those winds stay strong. That's where the storm is now. But north of that, it's not the snow we're talking about. It's extreme cold. Some notable wind chill values from those early morning hours into the minus 50s for portions of Northwest Territories, minus 40s through Alberta, Saskatchewan, and into the minus 30s as we push into Northwest Ontario. That polar air will begin to swing its way eastward as we head into early next week, which means after snow in Ontario and Quebec, the cold settles in. Omar?
Okay, we've been warned. All right, Kelsey, thank you. Coming up.
There's not one witness against us other than one person who is a deranged. He's got a lot of problems.
The tense final day of the former president's civil fraud trial. Plus, some Canadian iPhone users set to get a slice of Apple's multi-million-dollar payout. Dramatic moments in a New York City courtroom on the final day of the penalty phase of Donald Trump's civil fraud case. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin on the former president's surprise closing arguments and the judge's intervention.
A plot twist on another day in court for former President Donald Trump. To the surprise of many at his trial in Manhattan, he was granted 5 minutes to make closing arguments. He used much of his time to repeat what he said outside the courtroom.
It's a shame. It's really a witch hunt in the truest sense of the word. It's election interference.
Trump claimed the judge Arthur Engoron had his own political agenda, prompting him to tell Trump's lawyers to control their client. The judge has already ruled Trump and his organization inflated his wealth, for instance, wrongly claiming his penthouse was 3 times its actual size. All this to get better deals on loans. So largely at stake now, Trump's empire in New York, whether he should pay a $370 million fine and be barred from doing business in the state. Judge Engoron has repeatedly faced threats, and this morning, police responded to a fake bomb threat at his house. Attorney General Letitia James brought forward this civil case, and today Trump called her a political hack.
This case has never been about politics or personal vendetta or about name-calling. This case is about the facts and the law. And Mr. Donald Trump violated the law.
But Trump maintains months of trial and piles of documents fail to show he's done anything wrong. And he claims cases against him are all part of his political persecution.
Oh, I want to go to all of my trials. These are all set up by Biden and the Democrats. This is their new form of cheating.
And that's the case he's put to the court of public opinion. The judge will issue a written ruling within weeks, but with appeals, this case is likely far from over. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
On the West Coast, the son of President Joe Biden pleaded not guilty to tax-related charges. Prosecutors say Hunter Biden willfully avoided paying $1.4 million in taxes between 2016 and 2019. He's since paid the money back, but faces up to 17 years if convicted. His trial set to begin in June. Still ahead, Apple's multi-million-dollar payout to some Canadian iPhone users. Meta is preparing to pay Canadian Facebook users whose names and images were used in advertising without their permission. The tech giant is offering $51 million to settle a class action lawsuit in BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Newfoundland and Labrador. The suit claims 4.3 million Canadians had their names or photos used. The settlement still needs approval from the BC Supreme Court. And Apple is also offering a multi-million-dollar payout to Canadians. CTV's Adrian Gobriel tells us why.
Apple is poised to extend an olive branch to Canadians.
Thanks to everyone who worked on these amazing products.
The Cupertino, California company has agreed to pay up to $14.4 million to Canadians due to alleged defects caused by an iOS software upgrade to the iPhone 6 and iPhone 7. While it might be a small piece of Apple's pie, the payout promises a maximum of $150 for each customer who qualifies across the country.
There have been a lot of questions around how this can happen, why this happened, and what remedy is going to be appropriate to make Canadians whole again.
The proposed settlement stems from allegations of performance mitigation features on certain iOS software, which caused the iPhone 6 and 7 to prematurely age, degrade, and shut down unexpectedly. The so-called iOS upgrade on older devices has been criticized by some customers for years, who believe it was an intentional ploy to encourage people to buy a new phone. Apple has never admitted to any wrongdoing, alleging that the operating system was supposed to protect batteries from dying.
What's front and center here is, did Apple actually know, or was there anything deliberate where doing an upgrade actually diminished the performance of the battery?
While a settlement isn't an admission of guilt, some technology analysts believe Apple is eager to turn the page on this controversial chapter while making amends with consumers. Roughly 60% of smartphone users in Canada reported having an iPhone last year. Samsung was the closest competitor, with more than 25% of the market share across the country. Information on how to submit a claim isn't available just yet. The settlement is awaiting approval from British Columbia's Supreme Court. A ruling is expected on January 29th. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
After the break, the latest tech taking us into the future. The world's largest tech show is underway, and this year a dominant theme, artificial intelligence. CTV's Krisa Najikate on the gadgets, giving us a glimpse of the future.
At the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the sky is quite literally the limit. The Xpeng Arat EVTOL is the latest addition in a flying car. Similar to a drone, it can take off for low-altitude flights, switching seamlessly between land and aerial modes, aviation regulations permitting. The Chinese company says deliveries could be as early as next year.
This is awesome. I've heard about it for many years when I was traveling there and visiting the different industries located there, but to see it now is really cool.
From flat screen to transparent OLED, a wireless TV that can switch between transparent mode and the traditional black background.
When you're not watching the TV, you can still provide unique experiences within that room.
Move over, Roomba. Samsung's Bolly is a home companion robot that can assist with various house duties, one of many devices powered by artificial intelligence.
It's been the hottest topic in tech really for the past year, and it's something we're seeing here at CES in hundreds of exhibitors and thousands of products.
Hey, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great today.
This is the world's first AI smart mirror for mental wellness. It provides health and wellness advice, adapting to the user's mood, using lighting and music.
If you are feeling stressed, it's going to recommend you a relaxation meditation.
Remember texting on the BlackBerry keyboard? Click's technology has now brought back that easy-to-use keyboard as a smartphone accessory for your iPhone.
Actually wanted to build a product for creators and a new generation of people that have never used a keyboard on a device.
Big tech and big ideas making the future of tomorrow already here. Krisa Najikate, CTV News, Halifax.
Looks like fun. That's a snapshot of this Thursday. Heather's here tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching and good night.